Welcome to episode, I think we're on like 58 or something like that. We have the amazing Kent Clothier on here, guys. This is a legend, an absolute beast of a man of a beast. He doesn't know me that well. We talked for like 5 seconds at our mutual mastermind called Avengers, which is an amazing mastermind in and of itself. He's an amazing guy doing an insane amount of business. So, Kent, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you being here.
Dude, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
100%. So quickly, for like the few people on here who don't know what's your background or who you are, which is going to be nobody, I already know, but just anyways, just for the podcast, quickly just give kind of a background of like what you're doing right now, what you do in general.
Yeah, I'm the CEO and founder of a group called the Boardroom Mastermind, which is the last, 12 years is kind of the premier mastermind in real estate space, very specifically. It's got about 250 members in there, as well as the co-founder of the Avengers Mastermind, which you're a part of. All of that kind of spawns out of, I have a real estate education company called Real Estate Worldwide that's helped about 60,000 people get involved in real estate over the last 16 years. On top of that, we've got a very successful real estate investment company that my family owns and operates. It's based out of Memphis, Tennessee, called REI Nation, where we buy and sell about 800 properties a year. So we buy those properties, rehab those properties, put renters in place, and then sell that as a performing asset to investors all over the world. Like I said, do that about 800 times a year, and then stay in place and manage those assets for them. So manage about 8,000 single family homes in 11 different markets. Also own a lot of commercial, multifamily, self-storage, et cetera, and our of different investment funds that we've created over the years, raised about $200 million over the last 8 or so years to invest in as well. And so, yeah, we got a lot going on.
I love it. That's so amazing. So guys, this is an amazing guy doing so much cool stuff. This is something I'm just curious about that I just immediately popped to my head. So I really want to ask it, like, because definitely you're at a point where I know there's got to be some point, and you're definitely at it, where like the money, it can't even be about making more money anymore, right? Because you said 8,000 single families, like commercial buildings, all sorts of cool stuff at this point, right? So I would say I'm still at a level where it's definitely gives me more joy helping people out, but I still definitely am like, man, I always could still use more money, but I feel like you must be at a place where it's like, it's not even an afterthought. What motivates you to keep doing it after all of these years? What makes someone want to keep doing it? Not just be like, hey, I'm good. I got my buildings. I can just relax, chill out, go to the Bahamas. What makes you want to keep doing it, keep educating, keep doing all this stuff?
I'm still a human being, right? I'm still an entrepreneur at heart. I'm still the father of 3 amazing kids, specifically 2 young daughters. And although I certainly could take my foot off the gas at any point, the reality of this is that they're watching. Mm-hmm. And, when you clearly understand that your kids will model your own behavior, the last thing I want them to see is entitlement in any way, shape, or form. I mean, and so it's important to me that they see the grind. It's important that they see the struggle. It's important to me that they see continuing to try to mold and shape my own future, that, I didn't come this far to come this far, that I still want to take on the world, that I still want to try to become better than I was yesterday. And I feel like if you can instill that, if you demonstrate that and then you instill that in them, and undoubtedly my kids will likely be, even better at it than I am, but certainly they are gaining the knowledge and the characteristics and the strategies and the tactics of how to be a good human being by modeling exactly what me and my wife do every day. And that's, we go out there and try to create impact in the world any way we can.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to start with a question that I always like starting off with, because the name of this podcast is Skorch the Fears. So it's all about like figuring out, all right, we want to look at the greats, and we want to say like, okay, like looking at someone like you, a lot of people, I already know this when I was looking at my original mentors, which were and Jamil, Damji, and being like, man, that is a tall freaking mountain to climb to get to be able to like own that much single family, own that much commercial, doing flips. everything, right? So going back to Kent, right when he was starting, when he was starting in real estate investing, like what were his greatest fears? Like what was he dealing with in order to like be able to get into this world? And how did you eventually overcome those?
Well, I came into real estate in a very specific way, right? So I had built from 17 to 30, I had built, along with many others that helped me and played a significant role. I had been a product of building a business from 17 to 30 that ultimately, by the time I was 30, was doing $1.8 billion a year in sales
Ooh,
and was the seventh largest privately held company in the state of Florida. I'm sitting on top of that mountain and suddenly got into a run-in with my partners and walked out of there on March 14th of 2000 and spent the next 2 years burning everything to the ground by basically believing I was bigger and better than I was and trying to go and start a competing company and going after my partners and suing each other and just making bad financial decisions along the way and a lot of money going to attorneys and all that kind of stuff. And so over a 22-month period, I lost everything I'd ever built. And so when you get into a place of desperation, it doesn't feel like it when you're in it, but there's something extremely liberating when you are all the way down, as low as you can go, because you realize there's only one place to go, and that's up. And I basically had my back against the wall. I went to a real estate seminar. I a course on how to wholesale. I did not trust any of my decisions because I'd made so many bad decisions. And so my biggest fear at that point was just being wrong again. And so, 22 months of bad decisions, here I am I just didn't trust myself. But the desperation of having to make it work was extremely liberating because, if you remember the story of Hernando Cortez, who sailed into the New World on behalf of Spain, and we arrived on the shores of Central America to go and try to get the gold from the natives. He arrived on the shore and burned the boats of all of his, of his entire fleet, and told his soldiers that the only way they were going to get the gold. If they got the gold, they can turn around and build new ships and go home. And I think there's, that we've all heard that analogy in the past, but I think it's very true. Like when you have no place to go, fear is just a concept that us as humans buy into, right? I mean, our brain literally has one function: just don't die. Right? And it is constantly at a very subconscious level and sometimes conscious level, we are always looking for the worst case scenario. And many, many times, certainly in business, we paint this picture of what we believe we should be fearful of, when the reality of it is, when your back's against the wall and you have to make money, or you have to figure out how to not die, or you have to figure out how to survive, a lot of that fear just goes away. And you are like, I don't have a choice. I have to do what I have to do. And I think that so for me, my journey was, I just need to make this work. I need to go make some money. And once I got that first check, I got over the shock that it actually had happened, and that everything I had just learned that seemed so insurmountable was trivial at best. I started believing in myself, creating a little momentum, and then start doing more and more and more of it. And that exercising that muscle constantly of, if you're afraid of it, go after it. If you're afraid of it, go after it, has turned out to be extremely profitable for me in every imaginable way in my life. But, at the end of the day, I was not thinking about building an empire. I was just thinking about stop being broke, stop acting like a victim, take control.
And also, like, this is something that I've heard from people who like kind of went into what you were just talking about, where they had a successful business. Was that not real estate related whatsoever? The business?
No, had nothing to do with real estate. It was in groceries.
Gotcha. And so I've heard that a lot, where like people, when they like fail in the business, the second time around it's not only that you're desperate, but it's also that it's like you had to go through hell because you had it all, and then you lost it, and then to restart again. Can you talk, just because I know a lot of people, or people have talked to me about problems with partners, right? And I kind of want to talk about ways that maybe some people can learn from your mistakes of with the first business, the grocery business, and how did the problem start, and what do you think? Was there any way to
Well,
have
look,
prevented?
rather than talk about that, let me just talk about all the partnerships over the last
Mhm.
35 years in business, right? And so
Sure.
the biggest lessons I can share with anybody as it relates to partnerships specifically is, rather than get into the drama of how this or happened, that happened, the bottom line is what was the lesson that was learned
Yeah,
so that you can benefit from it. And the lessons that are learned are two
exactly.
things I would tell you. You never partner with anybody out of convenience. You
Hmm.
always partner with somebody who is complementing your weaknesses. And so for me, in every relationship that I'm in, certainly from a business standpoint, I am the visionary, right? I am the alpha. I am the guy. I'm the one that's, my personality type is I'm going to drive the business forward. I'm the one that has the big vision. I'm the one who understands what the addressable market is. I understand what we're trying to accomplish, et cetera. And I have a good working knowledge of how to solve the problems or address the challenges that are going to inevitably come.
Hmm.
What I'm looking for in a partner that is somebody or multiple somebodies that are complementing me and addressing the challenges that are there in front of me. So that might be money partners, that might be operations partners, that might be technical partners, that might be somebody who is offsetting areas that are weak areas for me, that are not my prime focus, my prime strength. They, if you think about in an organization, a chief operating officer versus a CEO, a chief operating
Right.
officer or a chief financial officer, these are people who, in my experience, are traditionally, the math is much more insistent. The systems, the processes, the outcome. How do we systematize? These are things that they have a very engineering type mind. They're all about the problem solving, and they're all about the implementation of the solution. The very thing that, although I have an amazingly healthy relationship and understanding of that, the reality of it is I don't want to do that, right? Just like they don't
Right.
want to be out in front, leading, taking all the shots, being a public persona, driving the vision, trying to understand they don't want any of that. They just want, hey, get in this. And so we complement each other very, very well. And so you always put partnerships together where somebody is offsetting your weak areas. Never do you put partners together where you have two visionaries or two operators or
Right.
two finance. That just doesn't work in my experience. It's always, you have to look at partnerships in that the sum of the parts equals something greater than what's going on. So 1 and 1 does not equal 2. That is not a good partnership. No,
Hmm.
1 and 1 must equal 3 or 4 or 5 or 10. With the fuel you've got and the fuel I've got combined, this thing forms a much bigger whole. The sum of it does than us if we were operating independently. That's extremely important. And you have to be careful of seducing yourself and thinking that's going to happen. You literally have to be able to, like if you were sitting in a room with me or a business mentor or somebody else, if you can't logically defend it and say that I know this is going to happen and this is why, then you have no business doing it.
Hmm.
If you would defend it through emotion, hey, you know what? I just like Jonah. He likes me. Hey, let's just go do this stuff together. And I just think this is all going to happen. That is you seducing yourself into an outcome, right? You can't logically defend it. If you can basically come in there and say, hey, he's got this amazing CRM program and that has 10,000 users, and Kent, you have this amazing reach that if we combine this together, Kent, you can bring your audience here. And suddenly now that 10 goes to 20 or 30 or 40. That's a good partnership. Now all of a sudden we got something. And so you have to look at it that way. The third thing I will tell you is that when you enter into a partnership, most beneficial things you could ever do is get divorced before you get married.
Ooh, what does that mean?
Is to
That's
lay
interesting.
out exactly what it would look like if the partnership fell apart. And do it before the
prenup.
You got it. Do it before the partnership exists.
Love it.
Because no different than marriage, not all businesses, in fact, most businesses fail. And so clearly outlining what happens if a business fails, time and time again, this has been proven to be very true for us, is that when we have a very clear operating agreement, a very clear shareholder agreement, a very clear bylaws of the company, we now understand all the rules of the game. And so if, the partnership exists and Kent goes off and loses his mind, right? Suddenly, Kent is going through a divorce, or he develops a drinking problem or whatever, right? And he kind of loses it a little bit and checks out of the business. It clearly says in the operating agreement, if this happens, this is how we would get Kent out of the business fairly. And so I'm not, as Kent's partner, I'm not having to deal with all of Kent's emotional baggage. I'm not trying to negotiate all that stuff while all the emotions are high. It says, and we all signed it day one, this is how that would get handled. And therefore it takes all the pressure off. None of the resentment gets built up by one partner or another. Oh man, I'm sitting here and we're supposed to be 50-50 partners and I'm doing all the work and he's taking half of it home. All that goes away, which makes for a healthy partnership.
I really like that answer and a lot. And like, you're 100% right. Everything I always see is the first one, especially if they're like newer. It's just like, hey, you've been my best friend since kindergarten. Like, of course you'd make a great partner. We make great friends, right? But I 100% agree in the sense that really, guys, you got to be focusing on like, what are they able to do? Are they able to freaking like actually compliment you? And like, are you able to actually make it? Like, my one business partner is for the CRM I'm making for direct to agent outreach, because I haven't seen any CRMs like that, but I have a partner in that. And the fact that he's such a good integrator and I'm such a good visionary, it actually works. And it's not like based off of the fact I knew them since I was like a little kid, even though there are friends of mine who want to start businesses with me because they see how successful I am. And I'm like, no, you're not dedicated to it. And also you're not bringing really anything to the table. So I love that. That's like an awesome answer. And it's true. And then in terms of, so basically you answered this for sure. But this is like an interesting thing where I've heard different answers for different people on. Do you think everyone, if they're struggling, should burn the boats? I feel like there's a certain type of person who can handle that. And then there are some people who would like shut down. Or I know you're in the education space. So what would you recommend to
Here's what I know to be true. The people that should burn the boats should they should understand what their potential is before burning the boats, right? And so a very healthy, although morbid, but a very healthy exercise to do to yourself is that, I have 2 young daughters. And here's what I know to be true is that if somebody had a gun to the head of my 2 daughters right now, and they said, Kent, your business, let's just say my business was doing $100,000 a month. If they pointed a gun at my kids' heads and said, your business must do $1 million this month, or we're going to kill your kids. And again, morbid thought, but you'll trust me here. That circumstance would change what I believed my potential would be immediately.
Interesting.
Because what would happen, and the same is true of anybody watching this, is one thing's for sure: we would do $1 million.
Right.
In that business, which means that the business certainly has the potential to do $1 million a month, but in the day-to-day operations, it's just not a priority for me.
Right.
Under the right circumstances, under the right prioritization, under the right situation, the business has the potential to do $1 million. And as I'm admitting in that scenario, it is just based off of my effort, my intention, my drive. In other words, if the circumstances were right and the situation was as hardcore as that, I know for a fact that I would produce that outcome. And if that's true under those situations, under that circumstance, then it is also true in every circumstance.
Right.
Which clearly means the only thing preventing me from 100,000 to $1 million is effort, is circumstances, is focus, is all the thing, is intention. And if that's true, then I believe I have a responsibility to move as hard and as fast as I can, acting like that has to happen in 30 days. And I have to do it every day.
Right.
And when you go through a mental kind of, screw job on your head like that, and you're honest with yourself, like everybody watching this, if you knew you were going to die in a year, the things that you think are important today just wouldn't be. Period. I mean, we worry about trivial crap all day long, and because we think we're going to live forever. The reality of it is that if you knew you were going to die in a year, there are for sure things that you are pushing around, whether it's hanging out with my family or whether it's, getting this business that'll take care of my family for the rest of there's all kinds of things that we shove around in our lives, believing that we have time on our hands. In other words, the circumstances, the situation is not extreme enough for us to actually focus. And if that is true, you have a responsibility to change it, right? Because time's not promised to anybody. Mm-hmm. And if you have that potential locked up inside of you, if you have that opportunity locked up inside of you, then yes, I do believe in, many cases that burning the boats, forcing your hand, pushing yourself into a direction where you have no options brings the best out of you, and it allows you to actually realize what your potential really is. As long as you always believe that time is coming, I'll get to it next week, next month, next year. I can keep one foot over here and I don't really have to take any risk. As long as you're in that situation, you are literally robbing yourself.
Gotcha. That makes a ton of sense. I mean, I don't have children yet, but even me thinking about, like, if someone told me I have to make $1 million or my parents are going to die, I would figure a way out. I'd do something. Like,
so what you're acknowledging there, Joan, just think about it, right? And this is great for everybody. We get trapped believing that it is a lack of resources. This is the nonsense we tell ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't have the money, or I don't have the knowledge, or I don't have the contacts, or I don't have the money to go spend and go create that. That's the stuff we tell ourselves to keep ourselves trapped. Oh, I need the W-2 job for the insurance. Oh, none of that is true, because if somebody was going to do that to your parents, then it isn't about resources. It's about resourcefulness, mm-hmm. right? You would do whatever it took. And if you believe that is locked up inside of you at some level, like, I actually have the potential to go do this under the right circumstances, I could totally do this, then I would argue you have a responsibility to go do it, because it's still true. Why is it not happening? That's on you. That's effort. That's just not being resourceful. That's just not tapping into your full potential.
Right. No, I 100% agree with that. That's a very interesting way of thinking about it, in the sense of, I've heard of similar things about, like, if you died tomorrow, but, like, it puts it even more of a different perspective when it's about somebody you love. I don't know why it's weird about that. Like, how if it's somebody else, it's even worse than if it was just myself. But no, I love that. Do you do that a lot, or did you do it more when you were just?
I do it all the time.
Doing it when. Okay.
No, I do it all the time. I mean, I basically sit down and I ask myself, under the right circumstances, this business has, for instance, we have a business that we just recently purchased, and, my guys are laying out what's going to take place over the next 5 years. What would happen if we had to do it in a year? If we had to accomplish everything you just laid out for me over the next 5 years, what would happen if we had to do it in the next 11 months? How could we make that happen? What happened it forces that compression into the business of, it is possible. Again, the world is filled with examples over and over and over again people who accomplished amazing things because their head, their brain was not limited to what other people believe, what something that was reasonable. I don't see the point in being reasonable. I see the point in being in a hurry. I want to get everything I can as fast as I can every day. I have no fear of failure. I absolutely have a fear of regret. Mm-hmm. If I could have done it, if I can do it, I don't want anything to be locked up inside of me at all. And, that I think is a really, really healthy thing to do, because when you apply that pressure, you be shocked at what, if you've ever read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, he talks about most of us from physical challenges, when our brain is telling us, stop, our body can go, we still got at least 40% left in the tank, if not more. Our brain is just trying to tell you, don't die, be safe, play it safe. And whether it's physical or whether it's financial or whether it's always doing that to us. And the reality is we've got a lot more in the tank, mm-hmm. if you just tap into it.
I love that. That's super awesome. Like, it's such a good lesson, in the sense of, you always could do more. If you reframed it, right? Like, I definitely can see myself. I've seen myself falling victim to that last year, where I was like, I'm going to make $1 million this year. That's what's going to happen. And I got just short of it. And I definitely, if I had put it in that perspective, I would have figured out different ways of doing it. But that even if it meant staying up later, or like like doing things that even if I didn't want to do. I like that perspective is what I'm trying to say. I like that mind exercise. So I want to keep going into your story. So you burn the bridges, right? You burn the boats, burn the bridges, everything. You get your first wholesale deal that gives you a proof of concept. And then so what happens next? What's the next step in the real estate journey?
You know, unleash the dragons, if you will, right? So immediately I understood I could do it. You know, you have to appreciate the way the human mind actually works, the way we actually all make decisions, right? We make decisions based off of what we believe our potential is. And so we believe we have a lot of potential, then we will take actions up to that potential that we believe, and then it will give us results. And then that results will reinforce our beliefs. And so then we believe we have more potential, and we just start going around. That momentum starts creating. So once I did one deal, why can't I do two? Why can't I do four? Why can't I do 10? And in the course of 18 months, I did, 91 deals, made them over $1 million.
Hell yeah.
And that really reinforced the belief that I could totally do this. And then quickly, I'm getting newly remarried. I got a new little girl on the way, and I'm figuring out that I own a job. I don't own a business. The entire business is me. If I don't show up, if I don't do this, then we don't get paid. And so I became extremely passionate about putting in all the systems and processes that I'd helped to develop in my previous business venture in the grocery industry. And so started putting the people in, the leverage, the tech, all these things that this industry had never seen before, just looking for the most elegant and simple solution to the problem. And suddenly we were flipping 200, 300 houses a year. And we were doing this in the middle of the Great Recession. So as the world is melting to the ground,
that's interesting.
Our business is blowing up, and a lot of people, a lot of thought leaders in the industry were like, what is this guy doing down in South Florida? I'm like, how's this guy doing this? And suddenly started reaching out to me, asking me would I come and teach their groups and would I talk on stage, all this stuff that I'd never done before. And so within a matter of a few short years, suddenly I'm on stages and I'm telling people, oh, this is how I'm doing this. Here's this unique strategy I'm using to do this wholesaling business at scale. Most people are doing 2 to 10 deals a year. We're doing 300 deals a year. And nobody had ever seen anything like it in the wholesaling industry. And so before I knew it, people were, wasn't just speaking on stage. People were asking me, hey, can you put together a training? Hey, can you automate this process and put software in place? And before you know it, now I'm in a software business, and now I'm in this education business. And now, I've got all this other things that are spinning out, but none of it was the intention. The intention was just don't be broke, right? Just stop being a victim. But success leads and breeds other successes. And so once those things started happening, you fast forward to now, like I said, we have a education company that's been around for a long time, educated tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands of families that I know are better off because of the skills we taught them. Software companies has tens of thousands of users that take we were the very first data product in the space because didn't exist. We created it from the ground up because this is what I was doing in my own business. As Steve Jobs says in his Stanford commencement address, and if you've never watched it, go watch it on YouTube. You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. I wasn't looking forward saying I'm going to do this and do this and do this and do this. The reality is I was just going. And then I look back at it and say, oh yeah, well, that's when that happened. And that's when that happened. No, that was that decision right there. I had no idea that was going to, I didn't know any of that going forward. It was just keep going.